The air in the Blackwood Estates' formal dining room didn't just feel heavy. It tasted like old money and older resentment. I, Beatrix Sterling Blackwood, sat to the right of my husband, Leo, a smile etched onto my face, so perfectly it should have been trademarked. Across the grotesquely long mahogany table, Silas Blackwood, patriarch and source of all the tension, sawed through a filet mignon as if it were one of his children's ambitions. The quarterly reports from the Permian Basin operations are a disappointment, Silas announced, his voice a gravelly landslide. He didn't look at anyone in particular, which meant he was looking at everyone. Carter, explain. My brother-in-law. Carter, the current CEO in title, if not in palpable competence, dabbed his lips. Fluctuations in the local regulatory environment. Father, temporary headwinds. Headwinds, Silas repeated, the word dripping with scorn. A strong captain adjusts the sails. He doesn't blame the wind. His cold blue eyes flicked to Leo. What would you do? Leo, since you're so full of modern ideas, this was the dance, the weekly dinner, a gladiatorial arena with bone china. I felt Leo's thigh tense against mine under the table. A signal. Play your part. Leo set his wine glass down with a deliberate softness. I'd have had our legal team preempt those regulations. Dad, Carter's right about the headwinds. But we saw the storm clouds 6 months ago. The Sterling report on interstate energy lobbying precedents was quite clear on the options. He gave a modest shrug, nodding ever so slightly toward me. All eyes turned to me. The train seal. I let my smile turn warm. Attentive. The key is framing it as a regional stability issue, not a corporate override. I said, my voice calm, leveraging the memory of a 300-page brief I digested for Leo last month. It requires a nuanced approach with the Texas Railroad Commission, which the data from the 18 merger shows we've successfully managed before. Silas grunted, a non-committal sound that was the closest thing to praise he distributed all night. Carter's ears turned red. His wife, Evelyn, shot me a look that could curdle the hollandaise. Data. Reports. Silas muttered, turning back to his plate. Sometimes this family needs more instinct, less paperwork. But his gaze lingered on Leo a moment longer. The hook was set. Leo had used my work and my memory to plant the seed. Carter reacts. I anticipate. The rest of the dinner was a symphony of passive aggression. Ethan, Leo's younger brother, the artist, spent the whole time sketching on the tablecloth, blissfully detached from the currents of greed and inadequacy swirling around him. He caught my eye once and winked, as if we were co-conspirators in finding the whole thing absurd. Maybe we were. Finally, the torture ended in the silent, opulent elevator down to the private garage. Leo's composed mask cracked into a grin of pure triumph. He grabbed my shoulders, his fingers pressing into the silk of my dress. Did you see his face? The Sterling report. Perfect. B. Absolutely perfect. He kissed me. Hard. It tasted like Cabernet and ambition. He's doubting Carter. Seriously doubting him. The offshore rig safety violations you dug up on Carter's pet project in the Gulf. I said, sliding into the driver's seat of his Aston Martin. I always drove after these things. Leo needed to decompress, to strategize. The preliminary hearing is next week. If the media gets that document, when the media gets it, he corrected, leaning his head back, eyes closed, a mastermind at rest. Timing is everything. After the Permian stumble, this will look like criminal negligence. Carter will be finished. He opened one eye, looking at me. You're a genius. My secret weapon. I smiled, navigating the dark, winding roads away from the estate. My secret weapon, for 3 years. Ever since Silas's health had begun its slow decline and the whispering about succession started. That's what I'd been. I'd traded a promising career path in my mother's law firm for this for him. I'd cataloged every cut corner, every hushed-up scandal, every mistress and misappropriated fund belonging to his brothers, his rivals on the board, even his father's most trusted advisors. I had a mental filing cabinet, locked and cross-referenced, all for Leo. For us, the board meeting is in 3 weeks, he said, his voice low, intense. That's when we move. Everything has to be airtight. I need the final dossier on Old Man Marlowe, the stuff about his son. It's ready. The shell company in the Caymans, the transfers. It's all there. I kept my eyes on the road. Gregory Marlowe was the biggest obstacle on the board. A dinosaur loyal only to Silas. Exposing his son's embezzlement would neuter him. It was the ugliest file I'd compiled. Sometimes, in the dark, I felt the ghost of my former self, the one who believed in precedent and justice. Recoil. I silenced it. This was for our future. We pulled up to our townhouse, a modern, sleek thing in the best part of the city. Leo's bachelor pad turned marital home. It never truly felt like mine. He turned to me before we got out, his face serious. Things are getting hot. Carter's paranoid. He might be having us watched. From now on, the safe signal. You remember? I nodded. 3 knocks. 2 quick, 1 slow. Then I wait 10 seconds before entering. If I don't hear the all-clear phrase, the weather is cleared up from inside. I don't come in. I leave and call the emergency number. And if I'm not here, and you need to tell me something's wrong here. The same code on the garage door camera, Mike, he confirmed. It felt absurd, like a spy thriller, but the stakes were billions. Just for the next few weeks. B. Until it's done. Then it's ours. All of it. He kissed me again. Softer this time. I love you. You're the only real thing in all this. For a moment, I believed him. The warmth almost chased away the chill that had settled in my bones during dinner. I love you too, Leo. We entered the quiet house. Leo went straight to his study, muttering about a late call with a contact in Dubai. I went to the living room, pulling out my slim laptop. The final dossier on Marlowe wasn't quite as final as I'd said. There was a discrepancy in the dates I needed to cross-reference. The work was a welcome distraction. I lost myself in financial records and encrypted messages Leo had acquired, cross-referencing them with public databases and my own flawless memory for numerical patterns. Hours bled away. The quiet of the house deepened. My eyes grew gritty. I finally shut the laptop, the time glowing 2:17 a.m. Leo's study light was off. He must have gone to bed. Exhaustion weighed on me, a thick, woolen blanket, the tension of the dinner, the intense focus of the work, IT all dissolved into a haze of tiredness. I trudged up the stairs, my mind already on the cool pillow, the safe signal, the 3 knocks, the protocol that IT evaporated from my sleep-deprived brain. It was my home. I was tired. I just inserted the key, turned the lock, and pushed the front door open. The silence was different, not the empty silence of sleep, but a held-breath silence. And then I heard it, a low, throaty laugh, female, from upstairs, not from our bedroom, from Leo's study, every nerve ending in my body, previously dulled by fatigue, snapped to attention. Ice water replaced the blood in my veins. The laugh was followed by the murmur of Leo's voice, a tone I hadn't heard in years, playful, intimate, conspiratorial, not the tone he used with me, not anymore. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird in a cage. The safe signal. I didn't knock. Adrenaline, cold and sharp, cleared the last cobwebs from my mind. This wasn't a business call. I towed off my heels, the cold marble floor biting into my soles. I moved like a ghost, years of navigating this house in the dark, serving me well. I avoided the 3rd step that creaked. The murmur grew clearer as I reached the top of the stairs, the door to his study. The inner sanctum where he and I had plotted his ascension was ajar. A sliver of warm light cut across the dark hallway floor. I stopped breathing. I became a statue, a piece of the shadows. I inched forward. Through the gap, I saw them. Leo, leaning against his massive desk, his shirt undone, and her, Victoria Thorne, Vicky, of Thorne Industries, the Blackwood family's most bitter rival. She was stunning, all predatory grace and champagne blonde hair, holding a thick, familiar-looking folio point, one of the physical copies of the core asset portfolios. Her finger traced a line on a page. This one, and the Alaskan leases, she said, her voice a purr. Daddy's wanted them for a decade. Leo's hand was on her waist, pulling her closer. Consider it a down payment. Once I have the old man's proxy shares from the safe, and with your father's votes at the board meeting, Carter won't know what hit him. It'll be a bloodless coup. Then Blackwood is mine. He nuzzled her neck. Ours. A cold, sickening clarity washed over me. This wasn't just an affair. It was treason. A sellout. Vicky laughed, the sound like breaking glass in the silent house. And what about your lovely wife? The one with the photographic memory for everyone's dirty laundry? I hear she's been instrumental. Leo pulled back, his face hardening into an expression of casual cruelty I'd never seen before. Beatrix? He snorted. She's a useful tool. A brilliant one. I'll give her that. But tools get dull, or they see too much. My hand flew to my mouth, stifling the gasp that fought to escape. He continued, his voice matter-of-fact, as if discussing a corporate restructuring. Once everything is solidified, she'll have a tragic episode. The pressure of it all. You know, finding out about her beloved father-in-law's terminal diagnosis. The stress of the takeover will be too much. A nervous breakdown. There's an excellent sanitarium in Switzerland. Very discreet. The files she's compiled will be invaluable for the final cleanup. Tying up loose ends. He paused, his eyes meeting Vicky's. And if she becomes a loose end herself, well, the files will suggest a motive for Carter. Won't they? A final act of revenge from a defeated brother. The world tilted. The hallway. The sliver of light. The sound of my own blood roaring in my ears. IT all telescoped into a single, white-hot point of horror. Every secret I'd kept for him. Every moral line I'd blurred. Every shred of myself I'd given. It was all just operational. A prelude to my own erasure. The love was a lie. The partnership was a lie. I was an appliance, scheduled for disposal. A fury so profound and cold it felt like stillness rose within me. It drowned the horror, the heartbreak. It was a glacial calm. I didn't make a sound. I didn't burst in. I retreated, as silently as I had come, back down the stairs. I picked up my discarded heels. I walked out the front door, pulling it closed behind me with a soft click. I stood on the front step in the chill night air. I looked at the door. My hand, steady as a surgeon's, formed a fist. Knock, knock, knock. Too quick. One slow. The safe signal. I counted to 10. My heart rate had slowed to a steady, powerful drumbeat. From inside, Leo's voice, slightly strained, called out, "The weather is clear." I turned the key. I opened the door. I walked in, placing my heels neatly on the rack. Leo stood at the foot of the stairs, his shirt hastily rebuttoned, a concerned smile on his face. "B, you're out late. Everything okay?" I looked at him, the man I'd loved, the man I'd sold pieces of my soul for. I saw the liar, the traitor, the would-be architect of my ruin. I felt the glacial calm settle into every cell of my body, shaping my lips, brightening my eyes. I let a perfectly crafted, weary but loving smile bloom on my face. I crossed the room and kissed his cheek, catching the faintest trace of Vicky's cloying perfume. "Everything's fine, darling," I said, my voice warm, familiar, a flawless forgery of the woman I had been just an hour ago, just wrapping up some loose ends. "I missed you." The kiss I planted on Leo's cheek burned like dry ice. The warmth of my smile felt like a separate entity. a perfectly programmed mask operating independently from the frozen core of me. I could smell her perfume on him, a spicy, expensive scent called Amber Nomade. I'd noticed the sample vial in his coat pocket weeks ago, a gift from a vendor. He'd said, now it was the smell of betrayal, of my planned obsolescence. You're up late, Leo said, his hand coming up to rub my arm, a practiced gesture of concern. His eyes scanned my face, looking for cracks. The Marlowe files? Just dotting the I's and crossing the T's. I said, my voice miraculously light. I leaned into his touch. The intimacy, now a tactical maneuver. It's exhausting. Carter was insufferable tonight. I just needed to clear my head with some work. I sold the lie with a weary sigh, pulling away and heading toward the kitchen. I'm parched. Want some water? No, I'm good. He followed me, leaning against the marble island. I could feel his gaze on my back as I took a glass from the cabinet. The normalcy of the action was surreal. You were brilliant tonight, B. The way you handled Dad. Sterling report. He chuckled. Carter looked like he'd swallowed a bug. I took a long drink, the cold water doing nothing to douse the cold fire inside. It's what you needed, I said, turning and offering him a small, devoted smile. But Leo, are we sure about the Marlowe move? It's nuclear. If it backfires, Silas will see it as an attack on his inner circle. Not just Carter. His expression shifted, the affectionate husband melting into the calculating strategist. This was the Leo I'd built my life around. Now I saw the gears turning, assessing my question for its utility, not its morality. It has to be nuclear, he said, his voice dropping. Marlowe is the last piece of the old guard, still firmly in Carter's camp. With him gone, the board fractures. My support coalesces. The proxy shares from my father's safe are the key, but the board vote is the lock. We need to break the lock. He came around the island, cupping my face. His hands were warm. I forced myself not to flinch. Don't get soft on me now, baby. This is the home stretch. You heard him tonight. He's losing faith in Carter. We push, and he falls. I looked into his eyes, those beautiful, lying eyes. I saw the future he envisioned. Himself in the CEO's office. Vicky Thorne, probably in a newly created strategic partnerships role. And me, in a Swiss sanitarium. My memories medicated into fog. My files used to destroy anyone who questioned his rise. You're right, I whispered, leaning my cheek into his palm. I'm just tired. It feels ruthless. It's business, he said, kissing my forehead. And it's for us, for our future. No more playing in the minor leagues. We'll own the stadium. The cliché rolled off his tongue, smooth and empty. Now come to bed. You need rest. I let him lead me upstairs. I let him hold me in the dark. I lay there, listening to his breathing even out into sleep. And I plotted his ruin. The woman I was the one who loved him, who believed in the us that had died in that hallway. What remained was something sharper, harder. Eleanor Sterling hadn't raised a victim. She'd raised a litigator. And the most compelling case I would ever build would be for the defense of my own life and the prosecution of his. The next morning, I moved with robotic efficiency. I made Leo coffee. I kissed him goodbye. I waved as his car pulled away. Then, I locked the door, leaned against it, and let the first full, silent tremor of rage shake me. It lasted 30 seconds. Then I straightened up, wiped my face, and walked to my home office. I didn't cry. I made a list. First, secure an ally, not a friend, that I had none in this gilded world. An ally, someone with the resources, intelligence, and motive to help me. There was only one person. I placed a video call. It rang twice before the sharp, intelligent face of my mother, Eleanor Sterling, filled the screen. Her silver hair was in a perfect bob, her reading glasses perched on her nose. She was in her home office, a wall of leather-bound legal reporters behind her. Beatrix, it's early. This isn't a social call. She never was one for small talk. Mom, I need to run a hypothetical by you. Her eyes narrowed behind the glasses. Hypotheticals are for law school. What's wrong? A hypothetical. I insisted, my voice steady. Say a woman marries into a powerful family. She uses her skills to help her husband in a contentious succession battle. She discovers he is not only having an affair with a direct competitor, but is planning to funnel assets to that competitor upon securing control. Furthermore, he has implied that once her usefulness is over, she will be institutionalized or otherwise neutralized, potentially using the very information she helped gather. Eleanor's face went utterly still. It was her tell. The greater the shock, the more profound the calm. She slowly removed her glasses. The hypothetical husband. He has documented this plan, not the neutralization part. That was verbal. The affair and the asset funneling. There is a physical memorandum. I've seen it. The competitor's daughter had it in her hands. The competitor's daughter. She closed her eyes for a brief second. Thorn. Of course she knew. Eleanor Sterling knew everything. Hypothetically, I whispered. Hypothetically, she repeated, her voice now a razor blade wrapped in silk. The woman. What is her state of mind? She is clear. Good. Eleanor leaned forward. The first rule of a fight you didn't start. You do not throw the first punch. You let your opponent commit. You document the wind-up. You are a witness, not a participant. Do you understand? He's using me. The information I've gathered is now a liability and an asset. Her mind was racing. I could see it. You stop giving him anything new that can't be verified 5 other ways. You start giving him things that are selectively true. Bait. You backchannel everything. You assume every device is compromised, every call recorded. You need a clean phone, a clean laptop. Do you have access to liquid funds he cannot trace? My personal account, the one from before the marriage. It's modest. Modest is a start. I'm booking a flight. I'll be there tonight. Do not confront him. Do not change your behavior. Be the perfect, devoted wife. But from this moment on, Beatrix, you are at war. And the primary objective is not to win his company. It is to secure your exit with your freedom, your sanity, and the maximum possible resources. Anything else is a bonus. Am I clear? The glacial calm inside me solidified. Crystal. Good. Now, tell me about the memorandum. Every detail you can remember. And so I did. I described the folio, the heading, the way Vicky's finger had traced the Alaskan leases. My memory, the trait Leo found so useful, was now my weapon. Eleanor listened, interrupting only for clarification. He's greedy and stupid, she finally said. Conspiring with a thorn? Silas would burn his own empire to the ground before letting a thorn get a single acre. This is your leverage, but we must be careful. We need more than your word. We need proof that ties him directly to the conspiracy. Proof that can't be explained away as you being a jealous wife. How? You let him dig his grave, and you hand him the shovel. Now, I have calls to make. I'll see you tonight. And Beatrix, yes? Welcome back. The line went dead. I sat there, the silent house screaming around me. Welcome back. Back to the person I was before I made myself small for Leo Blackwood. The person who could win. The next phase was intelligence gathering. Leo was at the office, playing the dutiful son. I went to his study, the scene of the crime. It looked innocuous now. Neat. I went to the wall safe behind the de Kooning print. The combination was my birthday. A laughable bit of irony. I'd seen him open it 100 times. Inside were passports, some bonds, a handgun I didn't know he had, a fresh jolt of fear, and a stacked leather folio. My heart hammered. This was it. I didn't touch it. I took my phone, a burner I'd bought months ago for a surprise party, and never used, and photographed the safe's contents. Zooming in on the folio's label, BH/TS Alliance Preliminary. I took pictures of the first few pages, asset lists, non-binding terms. It was real. I closed the safe, my fingers steady. Next, his devices. He had a personal laptop, an iPad, a phone, all password protected, but he was careless in his arrogance. He often left the laptop sleeping, not shut down. When he took calls in the other room, I waited. An hour later, as if on cue, his laptop chimed with a calendar alert for a call. He must have been away from his desk. I'd seen him input the password 1,000 times over his shoulder. It was the name of his first boat, followed by the year his father bought it for him. Winesprint 89. I typed it in. The desktop unlocked. I didn't search for Thorn or Vicky. That was amateur. I connected a tiny, high-capacity flash drive I'd ordered for work backups and initiated a full system clone. It would take 20 minutes. While it ran, I went to his email. I searched for project code names I knew. Permian Review, Marlowe Adjustment. In the sent items of a secondary account, I found, buried in an email chain about offshore drilling permits, a single line. The weather in Anchorage looks favorable for a joint venture. V is gathering the necessary equipment. Expect a clear window in 3 weeks. Anchorage, the Alaskan leases. V, the clear window was the board meeting. I took screenshots. I forwarded the entire thread to a secure, encrypted cloud folder Eleanor had set up for me. The clone finished. I ejected the drive, closed everything, and placed the laptop at the exact angle he'd left it. My own work for him was the next piece. The blackmail files. I had digital copies, encrypted, but also physical dossiers in a safety deposit box. I needed to sanitize them, to create a version for him that was compelling but flawed, and keep the true, complete versions for myself. That afternoon, working on the Marlowe dossier, I called him. Leo. Hi. Sorry to bother you. Never bother. What's up? He sounded distracted. The clack of a keyboard in the background. The Cayman transfers from Marlowe's son. The third one. From September. The routing number is coming back with a slight discrepancy on the beneficiary bank's SWIFT code. My source says it might be a typo in the original data. Do you want me to list it as is? Or should I note the potential inconsistency? If Carter's people dig, an inaccuracy could discredit the whole thing. A long pause. I could almost hear him weighing the risk. Note it, he said finally. We look stronger if we're transparent about a minor data issue. It makes the rest seem more credible. Good catch. B. Just doing my job, I said sweetly. And I was. My job was now to plant seeds of doubt, to create tiny fault lines in his perfect weapons. The dossier would go to him, complete with its noted flaw. The correct information was already saved elsewhere, ready to prove that Leo had deliberately used falsified data if I needed to. Eleanor arrived that evening, a sleek wheeled suitcase behind her, looking like a visiting diplomat. She hugged me, a rare, fierce embrace. Okay, she said, pulling back, holding my shoulders. Show me everything. We worked through the night in the guest room. She examined the photos. Read the email. Her lips were a thin, grim line. It's a start, but it's circumstantial. A good lawyer, which he will have a fleet of, could argue you fabricated it, or that the V is someone else. The memorandum is best, but it's in his safe. We need him to take it out, to act on it. So we wait for the board meeting. I said, we prepare for the board meeting. She corrected, and we look for other pressure points. This family is a nest of vipers. Someone else dislikes your husband. We find them. We make them our friends. The next day was a charity gala for the city's modern art museum, an event Ethan Blackwood had helped curate. It was the last place I wanted to be, putting on a sequin dress and a smile. But Eleanor insisted. Circulate. Listen. Your brother-in-law, the artist. He's an outlier. Outliers see more. The gala was a sea of polished emptiness. I played my part, laughing at board members' jokes, complimenting rivals' wives. I found Ethan by a massive, unsettling sculpture that looked like melted chrome. He was holding a glass of whiskey, staring at it, not the art, not a fan of the canapes either, I said, sidling up next to him. He glanced at me, a wry smile on his face. Beatrix, I'm surprised you're not holding court by the champagne fountain. Securing votes for Leo. Maybe I'm securing votes for better art, I said lightly, tapping the placard for the chrome blob. Untitled, #7. You're doing? Guilty as charged. It's about the corrosion of ideals under a shiny surface. Fitting, don't you think? His eyes, the same blue as Leo's, but without the predatory gleam, held mine. You look tired. B. The crown weighing heavy? The casual use of my nickname. The perceptiveness. Through me. It's a busy time. I'll bet. He took a sip. Saw Leo having a very intense conversation with Gregory Marlowe Jr. in the corner earlier. The son, not the father. Odd pairing. My senses spiked. Gregory Marlowe Jr., the one whose finances I'd just flawed in the dossier. Probably about the museum funding. I said, feigning disinterest. Probably. Ethan echoed, not sounding convinced. He looked around the crowded room, at our mother holding court, at Carter looking pompous. You know, I always thought you were too smart for this. For what? For this. He gestured vaguely at the room. The performance. Leo's ambition. It's a hungry thing. It consumes everything, even the things it claims to love. His gaze was direct, unsettling. Just be careful. B. The paintings in this family, they have a habit of swallowing the people who get too close. Was it a warning? Or just the ramblings of the family cynic? Before I could probe, Leo was at my side, his hand possessive on the small of my back. Ethan, hiding from the patrons. I see, just admiring the corrosion. Brother, Ethan said, raising his glass in a mock toast before drifting away. What did he want? Leo muttered, his smile fixed for the crowd. Nothing. Art talk. I leaned into him, playing my part. He's harmless. He's a parasite living off the trust fund. Leo corrected, his voice low and hard. He doesn't understand what it takes to build something, to win. He looked down at me, his expression softening into the one I used to live for. But we do, don't we? My love? I gazed up at him, letting all the adoration I once felt, and the terrifying, perfect hatred that had replaced it, channel into a look of unwavering devotion. We do, I whispered. We're going to win it all. As I said the words, I felt the ice within me spread, forming a flawless, unbreakable plane. The board meeting was in 3 weeks. Leo was moving pieces on the board, thinking himself a grandmaster. He had no idea the board itself was about to flip over, and I was no longer a piece in his game. I was the player. The gala's champagne fumes and false laughter clung to me like a second skin. Back in the sterile silence of the townhouse, the mask finally came off. Eleanor was waiting in the guest room, 2 glasses of water on the nightstand, her laptop emitting a soft glow. She looked up as I entered, the sequined dress feeling like a ridiculous costume. Well, she asked, her voice cutting through the quiet. Leo spoke with Gregory Marlowe Jr. tonight. Ethan pointed it out. I slipped off my heels, the cool floor a relief. Why would he do that? The dossier on the father is ready. Talking to the son is a risk. It's emotional, not strategic. Eleanor leaned back, steepling her fingers. It's a threat, a direct one. He's not just preparing to expose the embezzlement. He's making sure the son knows he's been made. It's leverage to make the father compliant, not just defeated. It's messy. She gave me a pointed look. Your husband is getting impatient, sloppy. That's good for us. But it also means the timeline is accelerating. We need to identify the woman. Now, I'd been avoiding the full digital deep dive on Vicky Thorne. It felt like picking at a scab, but Eleanor was right. Sentiment was a luxury I couldn't afford. I opened my clean laptop. the one she'd brought, and began. Corporate bios, society pages, financial filings for Thorne Industries. Victoria Vicky Thorne, 32, only child of Alastair Thorne, Stanford MBA, head of strategic acquisitions. Her face stared back from the screen, dot sharp, ambitious, a smile that didn't reach her cold, assessing eyes. In one photo, taken at a charity polo match, she was on Leo's arm. The caption was innocuous. Notable attendees. The date was 8 months ago, a full 2 months before Leo had asked me to start the Marlowe project. She's not just a fling, I said, my voice flat. She's his counterpart. At Thorne, I pulled up Thorne Industries' latest SEC filings, cross-referencing with the asset list I'd glimpsed in the memorandum. They've been circling the Alaskan leases for years. Regulatory hurdles. Blackwood's congressional connections have kept them locked out. If Leo gets control and flips those assets to her, it's not just betrayal, it's corporate treason. Eleanor finished, a grim satisfaction in her tone. It's the one thing even a cutthroat like Silas Blackwood would never forgive. It's the leverage that could burn Leo to the ground without ever mentioning a Swiss sanitarium. She paused. We need to confirm the alliance. We need more than a glimpse of a document and a whispered conversation. How? He keeps the memo in his safe. I can't steal it if he finds it missing. The whole house of cards collapses early. We don't steal it, Eleanor said, her eyes gleaming with the cold light of legal strategy. We make him use it. We force his hand, just a little, and we find another way in. She tapped a manicured nail on the desk. This, Ethan, his warning to you, was it genuine concern or more gamesmanship? I don't know. He's always been detached. The family skeptic. The family skeptic often has the clearest eyes. And he has a trust fund, you said, meaning he has a stake in the family company, however small. If Leo is planning to sell crown jewels to the Thornes, it devalues Ethan's stake. His parasitic income, that might motivate him. She thought for a moment. Can you get to him? Without Leo, there's the Modern Art Foundation Committee. I'm on it. So is he. There's a meeting Wednesday about the spring exhibition. It's plausible. Do it. Feel him out. Not about Leo directly. About the business. About Thorne. See what he knows. In the meantime, she leaned forward. We start feeding Leo exactly what he wants. And we bake in the poison. The next morning, I performed the wifely ritual. Coffee. Kiss. Goodbye. The moment Leo's car disappeared, I was at my desk. The Marlowe dossier. Final open. I created a new file, a master version for Eleanor and me, containing every raw datum, every source, unvarnished. Then, I opened the version for Leo. Carefully, surgically, I began to introduce flaws, not obvious ones, subtle ones. A date shifted by a week on a transfer, making the connection to a keyboard vote seem more deliberate than it was. A shell company's ownership trail that led convincingly to Marlowe Jr., but had a single, dead-end link to a dormant subsidiary of Thorne Industries. It was a ghost, a whisper. If anyone dug too deep, they'd find nothing, but the initial scent would be there. I buried it 3 layers down. I also added a new, entirely fabricated section, based on Carter's known incompetence. I crafted a narrative of him seeking outside consulting to cover his Permian Basin mistakes. I invented a firm, Geosphere Advisors, with a faint, unverifiable connection to a lobbyist who'd once done work for a Thorne subsidiary. The evidence was a few fabricated email headers and a blurry, context-less screenshot of a wire transfer that could be from anywhere. It was thin, flimsy, even, but it created a link, Carter. Failure, and the whiff of the enemy. It was the kind of connective tissue Leo's paranoid, ambitious brain would crave. I called him at noon. Leo, I finished the Marlowe package. It's solid, but I found something else. It's probably nothing, but it's odd. His voice was instantly alert. What? It's about Carter. There's a consulting firm he's been using for the Permian mess. Geosphere. My source says they've been paid via a weird, layered channel. One of the pass-through entities did some work for a thorn shell company 5 years ago. It's probably a coincidence. Same third-party vendor. Different projects. But given the sensitivity, I let my voice trail off, expertly injecting just the right amount of concerned hesitation. I could hear the gears turning over the line. Thorn. He breathed. The name a curse and a temptation. You're sure? No, not sure. The trail is muddy. It could be nothing. But with the board vote coming up, and your father already questioning his judgment, I thought you should know. I've included it in an addendum. Marked as unverified. Requires deeper dive. Send it to me. Now. The hunger in his voice was palpable. I'd thrown a stone into a pond, and he was already imagining the tidal wave. I will. But Leo, be careful. If we're wrong, and we accuse Carter of collaborating with the Thorns without ironclad proof, it could backfire spectacularly. Silas might see it as a desperate smear. His laugh was short, ugly. It's not a smear if it's true. And even if it's not, the doubt is enough. You've done good. B. Better than good. Send it. I did. The poisoned apple. Beautifully polished. The Modern Art Foundation meeting was held in a sun-drenched, minimally furnished conference room that smelled of money and espresso. Ethan was already there, slouched in a chair, doodling on a legal pad. He was the only Blackwood in a room of socialites and bored philanthropists. The meeting dragged. Acquisition budgets, donor lists, exhibition themes. I contributed just enough to seem engaged. When it finally broke, I accidentally dropped my pen near Ethan's chair. As I bent to pick it up, I murmured, I think your corroded idealism piece would give Mrs. Van der Hoven a stroke. We should definitely acquire it. He snorted softly. Finally, someone with taste. Getting out of here? God, yes. This caffeine isn't cutting it. There's a decent place around the corner. We escaped. The coffee shop was all exposed brick and indie folk music. We took a corner table. So, he said, blowing on his black coffee, to what do I owe the pleasure? Leo send you to vet my trust fund expenditures? See if I'm spending it on socialist propaganda? I smiled, stirring my tea. Can't a sister-in-law just want bad coffee with her favorite artist? I'm your only artist, and you hate bad coffee. What's up? B. You've had this look since the gala, like you're solving a very complex equation in your head, and you don't like the answer. The directness startled me. I took a breath. I'm just tired of the games. Ethan, the constant maneuvering. It's exhausting. Then stop playing. He said it simply, as if it were that easy. It's not that simple. Leo, the company. It's everything to him. It's everything to all of them. Ethan said, his gaze sharpening. It's a religion, and they're all fanatics. Dad, Carter, Leo. They'd burn the world for a percentage point of market share. He paused, studying me. You know, I saw Leo and the Thorn heiress at the Guggenheim benefit last month, looking very chummy. My heart stuttered, but I kept my face still. Vicky Thorn? I heard she's very sharp. Sharp as a razor. Ethan agreed. And just as friendly. It's an interesting alliance. Don't you think? The Blackwood heir and the Thorn princess. My father would have an aneurysm if he knew they were sharing more than canapes. What are you implying, Ethan? I asked softly, holding his gaze. He shrugged, but the casual gesture didn't reach his eyes. I'm not implying anything. I'm an artist. I observe. I see patterns. Leo's pattern lately is one of high risk, high reward plays. Aligning with a thorn? That's the highest risk of all. For everyone. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. My trust fund, such as it is tied to Blackwood energy stock. A thorn getting their claws into our assets? That's bad for business. Bad for my carefree lifestyle of artistic torment. He said it with a smirk. But the message was clear. He had skin in the game. He was worried. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you're not one of them. Beatrix. Not really. You married into the circus, but you weren't born in the big top. And you're smarter than all of them put together. He finished his coffee. Just be careful which horse you back. Sometimes. The jockey's trying to ride it off a cliff. It wasn't an offer of alliance. Not yet, but it was a signal. A line in the sand. He saw the Thorn connection as a threat. I could work with that. Thanks for the coffee, Ethan, and the artistic insight. Anytime. B. He stood up. For what it's worth. I hope you solve your equation. And I really hope the answer isn't a negative number. The next move was the boldest. I requested a meeting with Silas Blackwood through his ancient, terrifying secretary, Mrs. Grayson. I used the pretext of the Blackwood Family Charitable Foundation, which I nominally chaired. I needed to discuss a sensitive matter of donor relations that touches on corporate perception. To my surprise, the summons came for the following afternoon. Eleanor helped me craft my script. You're not accusing. You're informing. You're the loyal, concerned daughter-in-law. You're giving him a puzzle piece. Let him find the rest. Silas's office at Blackwood Tower was a monument to intimidation. Dark wood, leather, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and the stuffed head of a massive Kodiak bear he'd allegedly shot himself. He didn't rise from his colossal desk when I entered. Beatrix, Mrs. Grayson said it was important. His voice was like stones grinding together. The foundation is running a deficit? No, sir. The foundation is fine. I sat in the chair opposite him. Back straight. This is more delicate. It concerns the family and the company. His ice blue eyes, so like Leo's but infinitely colder, fixed on me. He said nothing, just waited. I was doing some due diligence for a potential foundation partner. I began, my voice steady, rehearsed. A conservation group with ties to Alaskan wildlife management. In the course of my research, I came across some chatter in the regulatory forums about the Prudhoe Bay leases. I saw a flicker in his eyes. Prudhoe Bay was the crown jewel of the Alaskan holdings. What kind of chatter? He rumbled. Rumors. Unsubstantiated. That Thorn Industries has been unusually active in Juneau lately. Lobbying efforts that seem disproportionately focused on the regulatory frameworks governing our specific sectors, more than just standard competitor interest. I met his gaze, letting a flicker of sincere worry show. I know how strategic those assets are, and I know the history with the Thorns. I felt you should be aware. It's probably nothing, but with the board meeting coming up, and Carter's challenges in the Permian, I worried it might be a moment of perceived vulnerability. I'd done it. I'd linked Thorn activity to our assets, to Carter's troubles, and to the board meeting, all without mentioning Leo. I'd presented myself as a loyal foot soldier, dutifully reporting suspicious activity on the perimeter. Silas steepled his fingers, his gaze never leaving me. The silence stretched. You brought this to me, he said finally. Not to Leo. A trick question. Leo is under tremendous pressure with the board meeting and everything else. I didn't want to add to his burdens with an unconfirmed rumor. And, I added, dropping my eyes slightly, a gesture of respect. You're the one who built this. You'd know if it was a threat worth taking seriously. More silence. Then, a slow, almost imperceptible nod. Thorn is a snake. Alastair Thorn has wanted a piece of the North Slope since we outmaneuvered him in '92. He leaned back, the leather of his chair groaning. You did right to bring this to me. Beatrix, discretion is a rare commodity in this family. He assessed me anew. You have a good mind. Sharp. Wasted on galas and grant proposals. It wasn't warmth. It was an appraisal, a recalibration of my value. Thank you. Silas, I just want what's best for the family. Do you? He asked. The question loaded. Before I could answer, he waved a gnarled hand. We'll look into the Thorn activity. You, keep your ears open. At the foundation, Elsewhere, report anything unusual directly to Mrs. Grayson. It was a test, and a tiny, terrifying offer. He was making me a source. I'd just inserted myself into his intelligence network. Of course, I said, standing. I will. I left his office, my legs trembling only once I was in the elevator. I'd done it. I'd planted the seed of doubt about Thorn directly in Silas's mind. Now, when Leo made his move, the ground would already be fertile for suspicion. That night, Leo was exultant. He paced the living room, a glass of whiskey in his hand. The Marlowe dossier is perfect. B. Perfect. And that tidbit about Carter and Thorn? I ran it by my guy at the SEC. He says it's worth a deeper look. It's the perfect catalyst. It frames everything that Carter's incompetence, his potential disloyalty. He stopped, pulling me into a crushing embrace. You're a genius. In 3 weeks, it all changes. For us. I rested my head against his chest, where I could hear the steady, deceitful beat of his heart. For us. I echoed, my voice muffled against his shirt. I thought of the seed growing in Silas's mind. I thought of the flawed data in the dossier. I thought of Ethan's wary eyes and the ghost of a thorn link I'd buried. A web, invisible to him, was slowly weaving itself around him. He was planning a bloodless coup, but I was planning something else entirely. Not a coup, an extermination, and he was handing me all the poison I needed. One trusting smile at a time. 3 days after my meeting with Silas, the call came, not from Leo, not from the Foundation, but from the dragon herself, Mrs. Grayson. Her voice, like rustling parchment over a crackling phone line, held no warmth. Mr. Blackwood requests your presence at the tower. 10 a.m., the private elevator. It was a command, not an invitation. The private elevator led directly to Silas's sanctum, bypassing the corporate hive below. Eleanor, who had extended her visit into an indefinite strategic residency in a nearby hotel, listened as I relayed the message, her face a mask of concentration. He's taking the bait, she said, pacing the length of my pristine living room. This isn't about the Foundation. This is a debriefing, or an interrogation. Remember, you're the loyal, slightly naive insider who stumbled on something worrying. You're not a strategist. You are a concerned wife and dutiful daughter-in-law. I know the part, I said, my stomach a knot of cold dread. Playing Leo was one thing. He was blinded by his own ambition. Silas Blackwood saw everything. Stick to what you heard. Vague regulatory chatter. Concern for the family legacy. If he pushes, you get nervous. You defer to Leo's expertise, but express worry that he's so focused on the internal battle with Carter that an external threat might slip past him. She stopped, placing her hands on my shoulders. Beatrix, this is the most dangerous conversation you will ever have. He will be testing you for loyalty, for intelligence, for weakness. Show him the first two. Hide the third. The private elevator was a wood-paneled, silent capsule that smelled of lemon polish and old money. It opened directly into Silas's office anteroom, where Mrs. Grayson presided over a vast, empty desk like a stone monument. She didn't look up from her typewriter to AN actual, mechanical typewriter. Go in, she said, the keys clacking a staccato rhythm. Silas wasn't at his desk. He was standing by the window, his back to me, looking out over the city he'd helped build and dominate. The Kodiak bear's glass eyes seemed to follow me. Sit, he said, without turning. I sat. The silence stretched. I could hear the slow, wheezing tick of a massive antique clock. Thorn, he finally said, the word dropping into the room like a stone. My people looked. They're active in Juneau, more than usual. Different senators, different committees, but the target is clear. Our holdings. He turned. His face was in shadow, the city light behind him. You have good ears. I was lucky, I said, keeping my voice modest. The right source at the right time. Luck is preparation meeting opportunity, he quoted. Stepping closer. He didn't sit. He loomed. Who was the source? A test. The first one. I had prepared for this. A lawyer with the National Resources Defense Council. She was complaining about the difficulty of their work. How the industry lobbyists, especially Thorns, were suddenly hyper-focused on niche permitting issues that only affect legacy operators in specific fields. Our fields. I made the connection. It was a lie, built on a grain of truth. I had spoken to an NRDC lawyer at a charity luncheon months ago. Name. Silas demanded. My blood ran cold. I'd have to look it up. Sarah. I think. Sarah something. I have her card somewhere at the foundation office. I let a hint of flustered embarrassment color my tone. I'm sorry. I should have. He cut me off with a wave. You're not a spy. You're a socialite with a conscience. It wasn't a compliment, but you brought it to me, not to Leo. Why? Second test. Deeper waters. Leo is under so much pressure. I said, weaving truth and lies seamlessly. With the board meeting. With Carter. He's so focused on winning, on proving himself to you. I was afraid if I brought him an unconfirmed rumor about an external threat, he might dismiss it, or worse, see it as a distraction from the main goal. I thought you'd know what to do with it, if it was anything at all. I saw a flicker in his hard eyes. Approval? Maybe. The idea that Leo was too narrowly focused, too blinded by the fight with his brother, would align with Silas's own suspicions. You think he's too focused on Carter? Silas asked, his voice deceptively mild. I think he wants to make you proud. I said, which was the safest, most evasive answer I could muster. Sometimes that can make a person myopic. Another grunt. He walked to his desk and pressed a button. A panel on the wall slid back, revealing a flat-screen monitor. Watch, he said. The screen flickered to life. It showed security footage, time-stamped from 2 nights ago. A downtown parking garage. Leo's Aston Martin pulling in. He got out. A moment later, a sleek, silver Porsche pulled in beside him. Vicky Thorne stepped out. The camera angle was distant, grainy, but unmistakable. They didn't embrace. They stood close, heads together, talking intensely for 3 minutes. Then, Leo handed her a small, thick envelope. She took it, tapped it against her palm, nodded, and got back in her car. Both vehicles left in opposite directions. The ice in my veins turned to dry ice, burning and numb. He'd filmed them. Silas had his own people, his own surveillance. He knew. I forced my face into a mask of confused shock. Is that Leo? And who is that woman? The car. You don't recognize her. Silas's gaze was a physical weight. I peered at the frozen image on the screen, now showing a slightly clearer close-up of Vicky's face. I let my eyes widen. She looks familiar. The Thorne heiress? From the charity circuit. I shook my head, injecting genuine-sounding bewilderment. But why would Leo be meeting her? In a parking garage? And what was in that envelope? That, Silas said, turning off the screen, is the question. He sat down finally, the chair groaning in protest. You brought me whispers of thorn snakes and grass. My cameras show my son meeting one in the dark. Coincidence. I felt the trap yawn open before me. Deny too much. I'm complicit. Know too much. I'm a co-conspirator. I had to walk the razor's edge. I don't know what to say. I stammered, letting the naive socialite front crack just enough to show distress. Leo he couldn't be. I let the sentence hang, the implication of treachery hovering in the air between us. Couldn't he? Silas's voice was like gravel. Ambition is a hungry god. Beatrix, it makes men do foolish things, desperate things. He leaned forward. You live with him. You hear things. Has he been stressed? Secretive? talking about the board meeting, about Carter, in ways that seemed extreme. I was treading on quicksand. I had to give him something, but nothing that could be traced back to my agenda. He's been under a lot of pressure. I repeated, wringing my hands slightly in my lap, a classic gesture of anxious confusion. Working late, on the phone with lawyers, I assumed with advisors. He talks about the board vote like it's a military campaign. The final push, he calls it. He's been having me help with dossiers on Carter's mistakes, on other board members he thinks are in Carter's pocket. I looked up, meeting his eyes with what I hoped was a convincing blend of loyalty and dawning horror. You don't think the envelope was it about the board? Is he working with her? I whispered the last part, as if the idea was too terrible to speak aloud. Silas watched me for a long, excruciating moment. He was looking for a tell, for a slip. I held my breath, letting the fear reel, visceral fear show. Finally, he leaned back. I think my son is playing a dangerous game, and I think you, whether you meant to or not, have just handed me one of the pieces. He steepled his fingers. You will go home. You will act normally. You will not speak of this meeting to anyone, not to Leo, not to your mother, to no one. You will, however, keep listening, and you will report anything unusual, not to Mrs. Grayson. You will call this number. He slid a plain white card across the desk. It held a single, typed phone number. You will say, the weather report is unclear, and you will be told where and when. Do you understand? It was a burner phone line, a direct link. He was recruiting me as an asset against his own son. The irony was so thick I could taste it. I picked up the card with trembling fingers. Yes, sir, I understand. Good. He dismissed me with a nod. Don't disappoint me, Beatrix. The view from up here is unparalleled, but the fall is very, very long. I rode the elevator down, my legs weak. I had done it. I had infiltrated the king's court, but I was dancing on the edge of a blade. One misstep, and Silas's wrath would make Leo's betrayal look like a lover's spat. That evening, I had to attend a dreadful cocktail party for a new museum wing. Leo was already there, holding court. I found him by the bar, charming a group of potential donors. He saw me, excused himself, and pulled me aside, his eyes blazing with excitement. Where have you been? I've been looking for you. It's happening. The trip. Trip? I asked, sipping my champagne, my mind still reeling from the afternoon. The board trip, the overseas site inspection for the North Sea platform. Carter is leading it as the CEO, a week from Friday. His voice was a low, thrilled hum. It's the perfect opportunity. He'll be isolated, on a rig, with a compromised safety system. Nothing fatal, of course, just a dramatic, embarrassing failure that halts production and costs millions. His final failure. He squeezed my arm. The contingency plans you analyzed for the platform's backup systems, that I need the vulnerabilities, the specific fail-safes that can be triggered remotely. To look like a cascade failure, the report you did last month. My blood turned to sludge. He was asking me to weaponize my work to cause an industrial accident, to frame Carter. The dossier was one thing. This was sabotage. This was criminal. I'd have to pull the specific files. I said, my voice barely a whisper. The original schematics are at the house. Perfect. Do it tonight. I need it by tomorrow. My guy on the inside needs time to set it up. His guy on the inside. Of course. He leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. This is it. B. The final move. After this, Carter is finished. The board will vote him out, and with the Thorn Alliance secured, the votes will swing to me. It's a checkmate. Thorn Alliance, that he said it, to my face. The sheer, arrogant recklessness of it took my breath away. He truly believed I was a fool, a tool to be used and discarded. I looked up at him, pouring every ounce of false devotion I had left into my eyes. I'll get it for you. Tonight. I went home, but not to fetch the files. I called the number on the white card. A male voice, robotic, distorted, answered. Yes, the weather report is unclear. I said, my voice steady. Lakeside Park, South Bench, 1 hour. The line went dead. I told Leo the files were more complex than I remembered, that I needed to cross-reference with some offshore safety regulations, that it would take me most of the night. He was annoyed but agreed. Just have it by morning. I drove to the park. It was empty, cold. A man in a dark overcoat was sitting on the south bench, reading a newspaper under the dim glow of a street lamp. I sat next to him. Your report, he said, not looking up from the paper. Leo is planning to sabotage the North Sea platform inspection trip next week. He wants to create a system failure to frame Carter. He asked me for the vulnerability schematics. He has a man on the inside. The man didn't react. Proof. He'll have the schematics from me by tomorrow. I can give you a copy. They'll be the ones he uses. Destination and timeline. Platform Poseidon. The board delegation arrives a week from Friday. The accident is planned for that evening or the following morning. The man folded his newspaper, stood up, and walked away without another word. I sat on the cold bench, shaking. I had just given Silas Blackwood the means to stop his son's plot. But would he, or would he let it play out? To see how far his son would go? I had to assume the latter. I had to protect myself. I went home, and I did pull the schematics, but I altered them, subtly. I redirected the vulnerability Leo's man would exploit into a subsystem that was monitored by a separate, silent alarm. An alarm that would ping not the platform's main security, but a server I could access, a server whose logs I could, if needed, forward to the relevant authorities as proof of deliberate tampering. I was no longer just a double agent. I was a triple agent, playing Leo against Silas, and threading a path for myself through the middle. The next day, I delivered the schematics to Leo. He barely glanced at them, kissing me on the forehead. You're my good luck charm. The following Wednesday was the Art Foundation committee meeting. Ethan was there again. As the meeting broke, he fell into step beside me. You look tired, B. The crown getting heavier. You have no idea. I muttered, walk with me. It wasn't a question. We walked through the sterile gallery halls. I heard a funny rumor, he said, his voice casual, from a friend who works in maritime logistics. Seems there's some unusual chatter about the Blackwood Energy North Sea inspection tour, extra security screenings, changed manifests, the kind of thing that happens when someone upstairs is paranoid about incidents. I stopped walking. What are you saying, Ethan? I'm saying, he said, turning to face me, all pretense of casualness gone, that our brother Leo is planning something messy. And I'm saying that if something messy happens on a rig, and it gets traced back to a Blackwood, the stock of all Blackwoods takes a hit, including the trust fund of this particular Blackwood. His blue eyes were hard. I like my studio. I like my life. I don't like the idea of Leo's ambition sinking my ship along with his. So he knew, or suspected. I had to be careful. That's a serious accusation. Ethan. It's a serious question. Is he? I met his gaze. I couldn't trust him, but I needed an ally inside the family. Someone Silas wouldn't suspect. I made a decision. What if he was? What would you do? Ethan's mouth set in a grim line. I'd want to make sure that when the inevitable explosion happened, the shrapnel didn't hit me, and I'd want to be holding the water to put out the most damaging fires. He paused. I think you might want the same thing. It was as close to an offer as I would get. The schematics for Platform Poseidon's backup safety systems were updated last month. I said quietly, the new firewall has a blind spot. In the auxiliary pump control module, a focus surge there could look like a cascade failure. Ethan didn't look surprised. He looked resigned. And you know this how? Because I'm the one who identified the blind spot for him. The words tasted like ash, but the logs for the primary pressure sensors are routed to a separate, independent server as a fail-safe. The serial number for that server's data feed is POSE177 Alpha. He stared at me, understanding dawning. You're setting a trap. For him. I'm building a fire escape. I corrected. For me, and maybe for anyone else who doesn't want to burn. A slow, grim smile spread across his face. It was the first genuine expression I'd seen from him in years. Well, sister-in-law, look at you. He nodded once. Poseidon 77 Alpha. Got it. If I hear any funny noises from that sector, I'll know where to look for the security footage. It was a fragile, dangerous alliance, sealed with a nod in an art gallery, but it was something. The week passed in a blur of tense normalcy. Leo was buzzing with nervous energy, making secretive calls, disappearing for hours. I played my part, the supportive, oblivious wife. Silas gave no sign of action. The man on the bench was a ghost. The day before the board delegation was to fly to Norway, Leo packed his bag. He wasn't going on the trip. Of course, he had to be here, the concerned brother, when the terrible news broke. Remember, he said, pulling me close the night before. Once the news hits, there will be chaos. I'll be at the office, managing the crisis. You stay here. Lay low. The media might call. Say nothing. Once Carter is officially blamed, and the board votes. He kissed me. A hard, possessive kiss. It all begins. After he left for the office the next morning, I stood in the silent, empty townhouse. The game board was set. The pieces were moving. Leo thought he was about to win. I walked to the window, looking out at the city. Silas knew about the plot. Ethan knew about the trap in the schematics. I was in the middle, a ghost in the machine. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The ghost from the park. Weather is clear. Proceed as planned. Do not intervene. It was from Silas. He was letting it happen. He was going to let Leo try to sabotage the platform, to frame Carter. He was going to let his sons destroy each other, and then he would step in, and I was to do nothing. I looked at the message, then out the window again. Leo's grand plan was hurtling toward its climax. But it was no longer his plan. It was ours, his father's, to test his son's ruthlessness, mine, to ensure his fell on his own head. I texted back a single character. Acknowledgement, agreement. Then I opened my laptop, pulled up the remote server log for Poseidon 77 Alpha, and waited. The trap was set. The players were in motion. All that was left was to watch it spring. The silence in the townhouse after Leo left was absolute. I stood at the window, the ghost's text burning in my hand. Proceed as planned. Do not intervene. Silas was giving his son enough rope to hang himself. My job was to hold the other end of the noose. I wasn't just watching, I was weaving it. My first move was digital, precise, and utterly ruthless. I accessed the secure, anonymous email Relay Eleanor had established. I attached 2 files. The first was a heavily redacted version of the financial trail linking Leo to the shell company used to pay his inside man on platform Poseidon. All identifiers pointing to me or my sources were scrubbed. It pointed only to a disgruntled, mid-level finance officer. The second was a single, grainy still from the parking garage security footage Silas had shown me. Leo handing the envelope to Vicky Thorne. The timestamp was clear, the faces recognizable, but the source was untraceable. I addressed it to Carter Blackwood's private. Secure email .1, he thought only his mistress knew about. I'd found it buried in the data hall from Leo's laptop. The subject line was simple. A gift from one brother to another. in the body. I wrote nothing but a Bible verse I remembered from a long ago funeral. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? Carter was a hypocrite who loved his Sunday church appearances. Let it unnerve him. I hit send. The seed of paranoia was planted in the enemy camp. Next, I called Gregory Marlowe's direct line at the Blackwood Tower. He was old school, loyal to Silas to a fault, and he despised the Thorns with a generational passion. Mr. Marlowe, it's Beatrix Blackwood, I said, layering my voice with a tremulous, worried tone. Beatrix, to what do I owe the pleasure? His voice was gravelly, polite but distant. I need to speak to you, not as a board member, but as a friend of the family, as someone who cares about my father-in-law's legacy. I let a choked pause hang. It's about Leo. A sharp intake of breath on the other end. Go on. I can't say much over the phone. It's not safe, but I've seen things, heard things. He's involved with Victoria Thorn. Not personally. I mean, of course, but involved. I think he's making promises about the Alaskan leases. After the board vote, I poured every ounce of a scared, loyal wife's anguish into my words. I tried to talk to Silas, but he's so focused on the succession. I'm afraid Leo is being manipulated, that he's going to do something that would break his father's heart and hurt the company we all love. The silence on the line was profound. I could picture him, sitting in his leather-bound office, face purpling with outrage. The Thorns were Marlowe's white whale. Do you have proof, child? He asked, his voice low and deadly serious. Not proof I can show, but I know it's true. And with the board vote coming, I'm just so scared. Mr. Marlowe, for the family, for everything Silas built. I let a sob catch in my throat. It wasn't entirely fake. You did the right thing calling me, he said, his tone shifting to one of grim resolve. Leave it with me. And Beatrix, be careful. Your loyalty does you credit. He hung up. Marlowe was a bulldog. He wouldn't go to Silas with gossip. He'd dig, and with the scent of thorn in the air, he'd dig in the right direction. I'd just unleashed Silas's most loyal attack dog. My final move of the morning was a lunch date with Ethan. We met at an obscure vegan cafe he liked, far from the prying eyes of our usual circles. He looked more alert than I'd ever seen him. The board delegation left this morning, he said, stirring a matcha latte. Carter looked like he was marching to the gallows. Dad didn't even come to see them off. Unusual. Silas knows something's coming, I said flatly. He's waiting. Ethan's eyes narrowed. You've spoken to him? He's spoken to me. He showed me security footage of Leo and Vicky Thorne in a parking garage. He let out a low whistle. So the old lion isn't asleep. He's watching the cubs fight. And you? What's your role in this delightful family drama? I'm the canary in the coal mine, and the one holding the map of the tunnels. I leaned forward. I need something from you, Ethan, and you need something from me. I'm listening. The family trust, the one that holds your shares, your income, the voting rules in the event of a material change in control or a substantial asset disposal. I need the specific clauses, the thresholds. He smirked, thinking of staging a coup, thinking of building a lifeboat. If Leo tries to sell assets to Thorne, even after gaining control, can the trust block it? Can minority shareholders sue? He studied me for a long moment. Yes, and yes, there's a 15% threshold for substantial disposal without a supermajority vote of all stakeholders, which includes the trust. And the trust documents give me Dot and others in my position standing to litigate for fiduciary malfeasance if the deal smells bad. He took a sip. It's a messy, public, ugly fight, but it's a fight that could tie him up in court for years. Good, I said. That's my offer to you. Help me get the exact language, the legal precedents. In return, when this is over, Dot, whatever over looks like, Dot, I will support you. Financially, through whatever channels I have, to buy out your trust share. You get a clean break, a lump sum, no more family strings. You can go paint in Patagonia forever. The casual facade vanished. This was his dream, and I just laid it at his feet. You can promise that? I can, and I will. My mother is Eleanor Sterling. When I have the resources, we will make it happen. A clean, legal, mutually beneficial exit. I held out my hand across the table. Do we have a deal? He looked at my hand, then back at my face. He saw no deception there, only the same cold calculation he himself possessed. He took my hand. His grip was firm, calloused from holding paintbrushes and sculpting tools. Deal. I'll have the documents for you by tonight. But Beatrix, what's the endgame here? You take Leo down. Then what? Carter wins? He's an idiot. Carter is a temporary problem. I said, the endgame is survival. And then, maybe, a little more. The following days were a masterclass in tense inaction. Leo paced the townhouse, compulsively checking his phone for news from the North Sea. I played the part of the nervous wife, bringing him coffee, asking anxious questions he brushed aside. It's all timing. B. He'd mutter, staring at stock tickers. The board will be in session on the platform when it happens. They'll see Carter's incompetence firsthand. The news will hit the wires before they even get back to shore. I'd nod, wide-eyed. Isn't it dangerous? For the people there, he'd wave a dismissive hand. It's a controlled failure, a show. No one gets hurt. Just a very expensive, very embarrassing show. On the third day of the delegation, my alert chimed, a silent, encrypted ping on my laptop. It was the server log for Poseidon 77 Alpha. Someone had accessed the auxiliary pump control module, a remote login, masked but following the exact pathway I'd outlined in the altered schematics. Leo's inside man had taken the bait. I watched, my heart a cold stone, as lines of code scrolled, a sequence of commands designed to simulate a pressure overload and then disable the primary alarm. The trap was sprung. My altered schematics had led him right to the monitored subsystem. The log captured it all, the digital fingerprint of the sabotage. Minutes later, my phone rang. It was Leo, his voice vibrating with a forced calm. B. It started. There's been an incident on the platform, a pressure valve failure in the secondary systems. They're initiating a shutdown. No injuries, but production is halted indefinitely. I made my voice gasp. Oh my God, is Carter okay? He's fine, Leo said, unable to keep the triumph out of his voice. But he's the one who signed off on the last safety audit. He's the CEO on site. This is on him. I've already got a statement ready for the press, deeply concerned. Full internal investigation, all that. The board is panicking. They're cutting the trip short. What happens now? I whispered. Now, he said, the smile audible in his voice. We watch him burn. He hung up. I sat in the silent living room, the ghost of his victory echoing in my ears. I pulled up the news. The story was already on the financial wires. Blackwood Energy halts North Sea production after safety incident. CEO on site. Phase 1 of his plan was complete. Phase 2 of mine began immediately. I forwarded the server logs, with a cryptic note about suspicious remote access coinciding with system failure, to 3 addresses. The anonymous inbox I'd set up for Carter, Gregory Marlowe's private server, and the ghost's number via an encrypted upload. Let them fight over who discovered the truth. The chaos unfolded with beautiful, terrible precision. Carter, already spooked by my earlier email, received the logs and went nuclear from the platform. He sent a furious, encrypted blast to his mother and his closest allies on the board, accusing Leo of industrial sabotage to force a coup. He had no proof it was Leo, but the accusation, coming from the embattled CEO on the scene, was a grenade. Marlowe, armed with my tip about Thorne and now seeing evidence of internal tampering, went straight to Silas, I later heard through the ghost that he'd slammed his fist on Silas's desk and bellowed, "This isn't just fratricide. Silas, this is treason. He's getting the company to pay off his thorn whore." And Silas, receiving the same logs from his ghost, had all the confirmation he needed. He didn't act yet. He let the storm rage. Leo's triumphant bubble lasted exactly 18 hours. That's when the first call came from a board member, not offering support, but demanding to know about rumors of external interference. Then another. The narrative wasn't sticking. Instead of Carter incompetence, the whispers were of sabotage and internal power struggle. Worst of all for Leo, Vicky Thorne went radio silent. Her number, which he called repeatedly, went straight to voicemail. The Thorne Alliance, it seemed, was a fair weather one. He came home on the second night, his face pale with a rage so intense it was almost quiet. He poured a whiskey, his hand shaking. "Something's wrong," he hissed, not looking at me. "Carter's people are pushing back. Hard. They're talking about a forensic audit of the control systems. They shouldn't have that kind of leverage. Someone is feeding them information." I sat on the sofa, curling my legs under me, a picture of concerned innocence. Who would do that? Another board member? Marlowe, Leo muttered, swirling the amber liquid. "That old fossil has been sniffing around. And my father, he's been silent. Too silent." He slammed the glass down. "It's like they're waiting for me to trip. Maybe you should pull back," I suggested softly, playing my part. "Delay the board vote. Let things calm down." "No," he roared, making me flinch. He immediately softened, coming to kneel before me. "No, baby. We can't pull back now. We're too close. This is just turbulence." Carter's last gasp. He took my hands. "I need you now more than ever. I need you to be strong, to be my rock." I looked down at our joined hands, his so warm, mine so cold. I thought of the sanitarium in Switzerland. I thought of the envelope in Vicky Thorne's hand. I thought of the server log, safely stored in 3 different places. I raised my eyes to his, letting him see only unwavering devotion. "I'm right here, Leo, always." He believed me. That was his final, fatal mistake. He saw the reflection of his own ambition in my eyes and thought it was love. He had no idea he was looking into the calm, still surface of a deep, frozen lake, and that beneath it, I was already swimming away, leaving him to drown. Silas Blackwood didn't summon. He detonated. The call came not as an invitation, but as a command delivered by 3 stone-faced men in dark suits who appeared at our townhouse door at 7 a.m. "Mr. Blackwood requires the presence of you and Mr. Leo at the estate." Immediately, Leo, bleary-eyed and arrogant, tried to bluster. "Tell my father I have a board call in an hour. I'll be there by 10. The lead man, whose neck was thicker than my thigh, didn't blink. "The call has been cancelled. Sir, the entire board is already at the estate, as is the family. Your presence is required." Now, the color drained from Leo's face. The arrogance flickered, replaced by a darting, animal panic. He looked at me. I allowed my own face to show perfect, uncomprehending fear. That the whole board? "Leo, what's happening?" "I don't know." He lied, his voice tight. "But we'll find out. Get dressed. Something black. Conservative." The drive to the Blackwood compound was a silent, rolling coffin. Leo stared at his phone, furiously typing, then deleting messages. No one was responding. I looked out the window, mentally running through the sequence Eleanor and I had choreographed. The performance of a lifetime. The main hall of the estate, usually echoing with false cheer, was a tomb. The entire board, 12 grim-faced men and women, sat along one side of the cavernous dining table. On the other side sat the family. Carter, back from the North Sea, looking both furious and smug, his mother. Penelope, tight-lipped Ethan, slouched with an expression of detached fascination. and a few other assorted aunts and uncles. At the head of the table, Silas presided, looking like a crumbling mountain. Mrs. Grayson stood, sentinel by the door, a notepad in her hands. "Sit," Silas intoned. His voice didn't rise, but it silenced the room's very atmosphere. We took the two empty seats in the middle, facing the board. I kept my eyes down, my hands clasped in my lap. Leo tried for a confident smile. "Father, this is quite a gathering. I hope. Be quiet," Silas said. He didn't look at Leo. He looked at Gregory Marlowe. "Gregory, begin." Marlowe stood, his face a thundercloud. "The board has been presented with disturbing evidence. First, concerning the so-called incident on platform Poseidon." He activated a tablet, and a schematic flashed on a large screen. It was my schematic, with the auxiliary pump module highlighted. A forensic analysis of the control system logs shows deliberate remote tampering with the subsystem at 14.23 GMT, concurrent with the failure. The access route used a backdoor outlined in security protocols that were updated last month. He turned his fiery gaze on Leo. "Protocols you commissioned, Leo, for a vulnerability assessment." Leo's jaw worked. "A security review is standard procedure. If someone exploited that knowledge, that's on Carter's security team, not on me." From the other side of the table, Carter shot to his feet. "You lying son of a bitch. You had your man do it. You wanted to make me look incompetent in front of the whole board. Do you have proof of that, Carter?" Leo shot back, a veneer of calm cracking over his panic. "Or just the desperate accusations of a failing CEO?" "I have this," Carter yelled, pulling out his own phone. He fumbled with it. "Then read," his voice trembling with rage. "A gift from one brother to another, along with a financial trail showing payments from a shell company you control to a technician on that platform." He glared at the board. "He sent it to me. He's gloating." A murmur went through the board. Leo looked genuinely stunned. "He hadn't sent that." "I had." His confusion was perfect. "That's a forgery. A setup. Someone is framing me." "Who?" Silas's voice cut through the din. Everyone fell silent. His eyes, like chips of glacier ice, locked onto Leo. "Who would frame you, Leo? And for what purpose?" Leo spread his hands, the picture of wounded reason. "To stop me. To stop the necessary change this company needs. Carter, or his allies, they know the board is leaning toward new leadership. This is their Hail Mary." Marlowe made a sound of disgust. "There's more." He changed the screen. The grainy parking garage footage appeared. Leo and Vicky Thorne. The envelope. The timestamp. The room gasped. "Care to explain this, Mr. Blackwood?" Marlowe's voice dripped with contempt. "A clandestine meeting with Victoria Thorne of Thorne Industries, 2 days before the platform Poseidon trip. What was in the envelope, Leo? A birthday card?" Leo's face went ashen. He looked from the screen to Silas, whose expression was unreadable stone. It's not what it looks like. Vicky, Ms. Thorne and I were discussing a potential cross-licensing agreement. Industry collaboration. The envelope contained non-disclosure agreements. In a parking garage, an older board member, Mrs. Vance, asked skeptically for discretion to avoid exactly this kind of misunderstanding. Leo's voice was rising, losing its practiced control. He was flailing. "And the Alaskan leases?" Marlowe fired back. "Were those part of your collaboration? Did the NDAs include a clause gifting Thorne our crown jewels?" "That's a lie," Leo shouted, slamming his hand on the table. He turned desperately to Silas. "Father, you can't believe this. This is a coordinated character assassination." It was then that Silas did the worst thing possible. He said nothing. He just watched his son unravel. The silence was more damning than any accusation. This was my cue. The script called for the victim to break. I took a shaky, audible breath. All eyes turned to me. I let a tear trace down my cheek. Then another. I began to tremble. Beatrix? Silas said, his tone shifting to one of gruff inquiry. Do you have something to add? I looked at Leo, my eyes wide with a pain I no longer felt, but could mimic perfectly. I let my lower lip quiver. I can't. I'm sorry. Leo, I'm so sorry. Baby, don't. Leo said, reaching for me, his voice a mix of warning and confusion. You're upset. You don't have to say anything. But I do. I burst out. De wordzisa sobi. I stood up, my chair scraping back, wrapping my arms around myself as if holding my body together. I addressed the board, the family, but my performance was for Silas. He told me it was for us, for our future. He made me help. The dossiers on Carter, on Mr. Marlowe, on all of you. I compiled them. I have a memory for details. He used it. I was crying in earnest now. The tears, real products of sheer adrenaline and unleashed fury. But I didn't know. I didn't know about her. About them. Beatrix. For God's sake. Shut up. Leo hissed, half rising. Let her speak. Silas commanded, his voice like iron. I turned my shattered gaze to him. I found out. I came home early. I heard them. In his study. Leo and that woman. I pointed a trembling finger at the screen. She had a document about the Alaskan leases. He told her once he had control, she could have them, that it was a down payment. I was quoting his words back to him verbatim, and I saw the blood leave his face. And he talked about me. He said I was a useful tool. That once it was over, I'd have a nervous breakdown. That there was a sanitarium in Switzerland. The gasps this time were louder, punctuated by a muttered "my God" from Penelope. He said the files I made, they'd be used for the final cleanup. And if I became a loose end, the files would point to Carter. I covered my face with my hands, my shoulders shaking. He was going to have me killed and blame Carter for it. The room erupted. Carter was shouting. Board members were talking over each other. Marlowe looked apoplectic. Leo was on his feet, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. It was the look he'd reserved for his enemies, and now it was fixed on me. You lying bitch. He roared, the sound primal. You scheming, treacherous whore. You're in on it. You're working with Carter. You planted all of this. His rage was my validation. I flinched back, a perfect picture of terrorized victimhood. I have proof. I wailed, my voice breaking. The memorandum, the one they were looking at. It's in his safe, behind the de Kooning. The combination is my birthday. It's called BH/TS Alliance. Chaos. Absolute chaos. Silas didn't move. He simply nodded to two of the suited men who had brought us. They left the room. The board was in an uproar. Carter was yelling about pressing charges. Marlowe was demanding Leo's immediate removal from all company positions. Leo stood, isolated in the center of the storm, staring at me. The hatred was so deep it felt like a physical force. You did this, he mouthed, the words silent in the din. I'll destroy you. I met his gaze over the tumult. For a fraction of a second, I let the mask slip. I let him see the icy, calculating clarity beneath the tears. I let him see the woman who had outplayed him. Then I looked away, burying my face in my hands again, sobbing. The two men returned, one of them holding the familiar leather folio. They handed it to Silas. He opened it, his old eyes scanning the pages. His face, already grim, seemed to age a decade in seconds. He closed the folio with a final, soft snap that silenced the room. He looked at his son. There was no anger left, only a profound, weary contempt. Industrial sabotage. Conspiracy with a direct competitor to asset strip this company. Conspiracy to commit fraud. And conspiracy to harm your own wife. He listed the charges like items on a ledger. Gregory called the company's general counsel and the district attorney's office for the Financial Crimes Division. Tell them we have a suspect in custody and a complete evidence package for them. Father. No. Leo screamed, taking a step forward. The two suited men moved instantly, grabbing his arms. You can't. This is her. It's all her. She set me up. Silas ignored him, looking instead at Mrs. Grayson. Escort Beatrix to the Blue Room. Have her met by her mother and the Sterling family attorneys. Ensure she is not harassed by the press. His eyes finally found mine. There was no warmth, but a stark, transactional acknowledgement. You will be dealt with fairly. It was a promise. And a threat. I had been useful. Now I was a liability to be managed. As the men began to drag a raging, spitting Leo from the room, I was shepherded out by Mrs. Grayson. I didn't look back. I could hear his shouts fading down the marble hall. You'll pay for this. Beatrix, I swear to God, you'll pay. In the ornate, silent Blue Room, Eleanor was waiting, along with two severe-looking men in impeccable suits, her top litigators. She didn't hug me. She assessed me, a general reviewing a soldier after a successful, harrowing mission. The performance was adequate, she said, her voice low, a little melodramatic on the sanitarium line, but effective. The memorandum was the clincher. One of the lawyers, a man named Sterling, spoke. The DA's office will want a statement. Will broker a proffer agreement that your testimony for limited immunity regarding your role in the information gathering. We frame it entirely as marital coercion under threat of harm. I nodded, the adrenaline crash making me lightheaded. And Leo, he'll be charged. The evidence is overwhelming. The board will vote him out before sunset. Eleanor allowed a thin, cold smile. You're free of him, Beatrix. Now the real negotiation begins. From the window, I saw two black sedans with government plates pull up the drive. Men in suits got out. Not Silas's men. Police and agents from the SEC. The trap had not just sprung. It had snapped shut. Leo was in the jaws of the law, and I, the architect of his downfall, was walking out the door, surrounded by lawyers, ready to bargain for my future. The mask was off. The game was entering its final, most dangerous phase. Freedom, I discovered in the days that followed, was a conference room. It smelled of stale coffee, lemon-scented disinfectant, and the sharp, clean fear of the men on the other side of the table. I was no longer Beatrix Blackwood, the betrayed wife. I was the Sterling witness, a cooperating party, and the most dangerous person in the room because I had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The first conference room was in the federal building, all scuffed linoleum and buzzing fluorescent lights. Across from me sat two assistant U.S. attorneys, a tired-looking SEC investigator, and a forensic accountant. My shield was a phalanx led by my mother, Eleanor Sterling, and her two best partners, David Chen and Marcus Thorne, no relation, as he dryly noted every time. Let's be clear about the proffer agreement. Eleanor began, her voice a scalpel. My client will provide detailed, verifiable information regarding the conspiracy to commit wire fraud, securities fraud, and the planned industrial sabotage. She will do so under a grant of derivative use immunity. Nothing she says today can be used directly against her. The information she provides will be used to build your case against Leonardo Blackwood and any co-conspirators, namely Victoria Thorne, the lead AUSA, a woman named Brenda Shaw with a severe bun and keen eyes. Nodded, understood, and in return, the government agrees not to prosecute Miss Sterling Blackwood for her role in the gathering and compilation of the proprietary information used in the internal family dispute. The information gathered under duress and credible threat of personal harm. David Chin corrected smoothly. The psychological evaluation report from Dr. Feldman is included in the packet. It details the coercive control and the specific threats regarding institutionalization. Shaw skimmed the report. The Swiss sanitarium, a direct threat used to ensure her compliance. I said, speaking for the first time. My voice was calm, clear, and carried in the small room. I was done with tears. He said the files I compiled would be used for the final cleanup, and that if I became a problem, they could be used to frame Carter for my death. I believed him. I let that hang. A fact, not a plea. The SEC investigator leaned forward. The financial trails, the shell companies used to pay the technician on platform Poseidon, the one that leads back to an entity controlled by your husband. How did you uncover that? This was the dance. I had to give them enough to validate my story, but not so much that they question my methods too deeply. I have a highly associative memory, eidetic, for certain patterns. Leo was careless. He left files open, talked on speakerphone. I saw a transfer confirmation on his screen, once for Kraken Holdings. I remembered the name. When I later cross-referenced it with Carter's accusations after the platform incident, I searched corporate registries. Kraken is a shell registered in Delaware, with a nominee director, but the tax ID number on a scanned invoice I saw in his study matched a different, older shell he used for a personal yacht purchase. I connected the dots. It was a simplified version of the truth, but plausible. I sounded like a human search engine, not a hacker. And the memorandum with Thorne? Shaw asked. I saw it in Victoria Thorne's hands. I photographed the safe where Leo kept it. I gave you the combination. I never removed the original document. This was crucial. I had not stolen it. I had reported its location. A subtle but important legal distinction. They questioned me for 4 hours. I walked them through the dossiers, naming each person, each scandal, explaining how Leo intended to use them. I described the geosphere red herring I'd planted, framing it as something I'd compiled at Leo's direction that I now realized was likely fabricated. I gave them Vicky. I gave them the parking garage. I gave them the digital fingerprints from the platform logs. When it was over, Shaw sat back. You've been very thorough, Ms. Sterling. I had to be, I said, meeting her gaze. My life depended on it. The second conference room, 2 days later, was the opposite. All rich mahogany, Persian rugs, and a view of the city at our feet. Silas Blackwood's personal boardroom at the tower. The family was absent. It was just Silas, the ancient, grim company lawyer, Mr. Hodgman, Eleanor, and me. This was not a legal negotiation. It was a feudal settlement. Silas spoke first, dispensing with preamble. The board voted this morning. Leo is removed from all positions. His shares are frozen, held in trust pending the outcome of the criminal case. Carter remains CEO, provisionally, under increased board oversight. He said the last part as if tasting something sour. The Thorne family has disavowed any unauthorized actions by Victoria. They've offered a token settlement to avoid a civil suit. I've accepted it. He was cleaning house, minimizing the scandal. I nodded. Sensible. His ice blue eyes fixed on me. You played a dangerous game. Girl, you used my own resources against my son. I survived. I corrected. My voice even. And in doing so, I prevented him from gutting your company and handing the pieces to Alastair Thorne. I think that earns me some consideration. A ghost of something that wasn't a smile touched his lips. Consideration. Hodgman. The lawyer opened a folder. The divorce. Given the circumstances. Criminal conduct. Threats to your person. We are prepared to offer a settlement that exceeds standard prenuptial terms. A lump sum of $15 million. The townhouse. Full ownership of the Napa Vineyard property. Your legal fees covered. It was generous. For a victim. But I wasn't just a victim. I was the architect of Leo's downfall and the savior of the Blackwood crown jewels. I looked at Eleanor. She gave a microscopic shake of her head. Not enough. That's a good starting point, I said, but it doesn't account for my contribution to the company's preservation or the ongoing risk I face. Leo, even from prison, will have allies. Vicky Thorne will want revenge. My safety has a price beyond a lump sum. Silas's eyebrows rose. What do you want? First, the divorce terms as stated. I accept those. I leaned forward. Second, I want the solar subsidiary. Blackwood Solar Innovations. All of it. Hodgman sucked in a breath. That's a wholly owned operating company with assets valuing over 45 million. Yes, I finished for him, and it's a rounding error on Blackwood Energy's balance sheet. It's also the one division Leo and Carter both thought was a greenwashing hobby. It's not core to your fossil fuel empire, Silas, but it's viable. It has patents, a small skilled team, and a future. I want it. Free and clear. All stock. All assets. All debt. Preposterous. Hodgman spluttered. Silas held up a hand, his eyes never leaving mine. Why? Because it's my exit ticket and my shield. With that company, I'm not just Leo Blackwood's discarded ex-wife, living off a settlement. I'm Beatrix Sterling, CEO. I have a platform, a purpose, and a reason for people to think twice before coming after me. It legitimizes me. It contains me. From your perspective, I'm no longer your problem. I'm a competitor, a small, polite one. He stared at me for a long minute, and I saw it dot the calculation, the respect, the relief. I was giving him a clean way to be rid of me, to make me someone else's problem, and I was asking for the one thing he didn't truly value. And the third condition? He rumbled. You use your influence. You ensure the DA's case against Leo is aggressive and comprehensive. You ensure he is prosecuted for the conspiracy to harm me. I want a restraining order that is more than paper. I want your network to understand that any physical or reputational harm that comes to me will be treated as a breach of this agreement and as a personal affront to you. I was asking for his protection, not as family, but as a business partner. It was the only kind of protection he understood. Silas leaned back, the leather of his chair groaning. He looked at Eleanor. You raised a chess player. Eleanor, I raised a survivor. Silas. She replied coolly. He gave a single, slow nod. The solar company. It's yours. Hodgman will draw up the transfer. The rest. Agreed. But, he pointed a gnarled finger at me. You run it. You make it something. You don't come crawling back in 5 years when it's bankrupt because you were playing at business. And you stay out of Blackwood Energy's affairs. Permanently. That, I said, a real smile touching my lips for the first time in months, is the plan. The final meeting of the day was in a borrowed artist's loft, smelling of turpentine and ambition. Ethan had a bottle of expensive bourbon and 2 glasses waiting. To the fall of the house of cards, he said, handing me a glass. To new foundations, I countered, clinking mine against his. I took a sip, the fire of it a welcome shock. I have the solar company, Blackwood Solar Innovations. I'm renaming it Sterling Horizon. Ethan let out a low whistle. He gave you BSI? I'm impressed. And terrified. What do you need from me? You're a creative director. I need a vision. Not for oil rigs, but for sunlight. I need someone to make sustainable energy look compelling, beautiful, not just morally right, but intellectually and aesthetically desirable. I set my glass down. The deal stands. I'll buy out your Blackwood Trust share. It will take time to structure, to get the capital, but I will. In the meantime, I want you on my board, as creative director, a salary, real work, a stake in building something that isn't soaked in all that. I waved a hand, encompassing his family, my past. He swirled the bourbon, thinking, you're offering me a way out that's not just running away. You're offering me a way to build something to run to. Yes, and if I say no, then I buy you out when I can, and you go paint in Patagonia. And we part as polite allies who once facilitated a mutually beneficial regicide. He laughed, a real, unguarded sound. God, you're cold. Beatrix, I love it. He raised his glass again. All right, sister, you've got a deal. creative director of Sterling Horizon, but I get to design the logo. And it won't be a stupid sun with a smiley face. Deal. Later that night, in the Stark, modern safety of a corporate apartment Eleanor had secured, I sat with the final document, the divorce settlement. It was thick. On the signature page, my name was to be reverted. Beatrix Sterling. I scrawled the signature with a flourish I didn't feel. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Leonardo Blackwood, formally charged with multiple felonies, pleads not guilty, remanded without bail. There was a perp walk photo. Leo, in a rumpled suit, hands cuffed in front of him, his face a mask of fury, trying to hide behind a file folder. The narrative below was brutal, detailing the sabotage, the Thorn conspiracy, the threats against me. The sanitarium detail was in there, sourced to court documents. He was finished. I put the phone down. I felt no triumph, only a vast, quiet emptiness, soon to be filled with the hard, concrete work of building. I pulled out a fresh notepad. At the top, I wrote, Sterling Horizon, 100-day plan. The revenge was complete. The survival was secured. Now, it was time to see what Beatrix Sterling could build on the ashes of everything she'd been before. The Queen was off the board. Long live the CEO. The day dawned clear and cold. A sharp, metallic blue sky that felt like a freshly wiped slate. 2 signatures would define it. One would bury my past. The other would launch my future. The morning's appointment was in a sterile, beige conference room at the courthouse annex. My lawyer, David Chin, and Eleanor were with me. Across the table, Leo's criminal defense attorney, a harried-looking man named Alan Crest, sat beside a court officer. Leo was not present. He was in a holding cell downstairs, awaiting his transport to the afternoon's hearing. The divorce, in the face of the criminal charges, had been fast-tracked to a mere formality. The agreement is as finalized, David said, sliding 2 copies of the final decree across the table. All marital assets divided per the settlement, lump sum payment, real property transfers, and the full, unencumbered title to Blackwood Solar Innovations, now legally re-registered as Sterling Horizon, Inc., to Beatrix Sterling. Crest scanned the document, his lips pressed thin. He was out of his depth, a white-collar lawyer dealing with a case that had spiraled into criminal conspiracy. His client had given him no room to maneuver. He signed with a quick, angry scratch. I took the proffered pen. It was heavy, cold. I signed Beatrix Sterling with a firm, clear hand, no hyphen, no Blackwood. The sound of the pen on paper was the only sound in the room. It's done, the court officer said, stamping the papers. Congratulations, Ms. Sterling. Eleanor placed a hand on my shoulder, a rare public gesture. Let's go. You have a press conference. The afternoon's event was in a different part of the city entirely, a renovated industrial loft with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. Leased as the temporary headquarters of Sterling Horizon, a modest podium stood before a sleek, newly installed logo. The words Sterling Horizon in a clean, modern font, with a subtle, abstract emblem of a rising line that could be a sun or a graph. Ethan's design. A small but respectable crowd of business reporters, a few curious investors, and industry bloggers had gathered. I saw Ethan leaning against a back wall, arms crossed, a smirk on his face. My mother stood to the side, a proud general. I stepped to the podium, the flashes of cameras a welcome heat. I wore a tailored cobalt blue suit. Power, not mourning. Thank you all for coming. I began, my voice calm and carrying. My name is Beatrix Sterling. Today marks the official launch of Sterling Horizon, a new energy company focused on the development, integration, and democratization of sustainable technology. I gave a brief, polished overview of the company's vision, the assets acquired, the talented team we were assembling. I spoke of innovation, resilience, and looking forward. The business questions were soft. Then, a reporter from the journal raised her hand. Ms. Sterling, your launch coincides with the guilty plea and sentencing hearing of your ex-husband, Leonardo Blackwood, this afternoon. Can you comment on the closure of that chapter and how it relates to this new beginning? A hush fell. This was the question everyone wanted to ask. I met her gaze, unflinching. Today, a court will hold a man accountable for serious crimes. I said, my tone measured, factual, crimes of fraud, of conspiracy, and of a profound personal betrayal. That legal process is separate from this company, but on a human level, yes, it provides closure. I learned a hard lesson, that in life and in business, your greatest asset must be your own judgment, your own integrity, and your own name. Sterling Horizon is built on that principle. I am choosing to look forward, to build, not back. The past is a lesson. The future is a choice. Another reporter jumped in. Is it true the seed asset for Sterling Horizon was part of your divorce settlement from the Blackwood family? Sterling Horizon was acquired in a fair, legal transaction. I replied smoothly. Its potential was undervalued. I see it. I intend to prove that vision. The energy sector is changing. I plan to be at the forefront of that change, not clinging to the past. The questions moved back to solar efficiency ratings and supply chain strategy. I answered with a competence that felt like a superpower. I was in control. The narrative was mine. An hour later, in the quiet of the new, still sparse corner office, I watched the news on a muted monitor. A live shot from the courthouse steps. Leo, thinner, older in a cheap suit, was led out by federal marshals. His lawyer, Crest, gave a terse statement. Leo had taken a plea deal. The evidence was overwhelming. He'd pleaded guilty to wire fraud, conspiracy to commit securities fraud, and reckless endangerment for the platform's sabotage. The more serious charges related to threats against me had been bargained down, but the sentencing guidelines were severe. The reporter's voice overstated. Leonardo Blackwood, disgraced scion of the Blackwood energy dynasty, was sentenced to 8 to 12 years in federal prison. He will also pay restitution and fines totaling. I turned the screen off. The number didn't matter. The time did. He would be gone for a decade. The world would move on. My phone rang. A number I recognized from the Blackwood Tower. Beatrix. It was Silas. His voice was even gruffer than usual, weathered by the storm. Silas, saw your announcement. He paused. Sterling Horizon. A solid name. Thank you. The sentencing. It's done. I saw. Another pause. The static line humming with unspoken history. The board is stabilized. Carter is on a short leash. Marlowe is happy. The Thorn matter is settled. He was reporting, as if to a shareholder. Then, his tone shifted, just a fraction. You did what needed doing. It was efficient. It was the highest praise he could give. An acknowledgement that my ruthlessness had matched, even surpassed, his son's, and had been directed at preserving his kingdom. I'm glad the company is secure. I said, and I almost meant it. Run your company. Beatrix, run it well. Don't make me regret our agreement. It was a warning, and a farewell. I don't intend to. Silas, goodbye. I hung up. The last thread. Cut. The door to my office opened. Ethan walked in, carrying 2 glasses and a bottle of champagne. I figured the corporate water was beneath the occasion. We have corporate water? We do now. I ordered some. He popped the cork and poured. To the future, and to not being eaten by our respective families. We clinked glasses. How does it feel? He asked, being the master of your own destiny, or whatever the motivational poster says. I took a sip, the bubbles sharp and clean. It feels quiet. It was the truth, the screaming tension, the constant dread, the performance that IT was gone. In its place was a vast, open space filled only with the work to be done. It was terrifying. and exhilarating. The first board meeting is next week. I want to present the rebranding package and the pipeline for the residential microgrid project. Are the mock-ups ready? Ethan laughed. Always on. Yes, they're ready. They're brilliant. You'll see. He finished his champagne. I'll leave you to it. Boss, try to look at the skyline or something. It's tradition. He left. The quiet settled again. I walked to the window, looking out at the city. The towers of Blackwood Energy, just visible in the distance. Now just part of the landscape, not the entirety of my horizon. I went to my desk, a modern, clean line thing, empty except for a new laptop and a single, framed photo of my mother and me. I opened the bottom drawer. Inside, I had placed 2 artifacts from my old life, the encrypted hard drive, a sleek black rectangle that contained every secret, every sin, every weapon I'd forged, and the heavy, gold Blackwood family crest lapel pin Leo had given me on our first anniversary. So everyone knows you're mine, he'd said. I picked up the pin. It was cold, weighty, intricately carved with the stylized oil derrick that was the family emblem. I held it for a moment, feeling its edges. Then, without ceremony, I leaned over and dropped it into the stainless steel trash can beside the desk. It landed with a dull, final clink. I looked at the hard drive. That I would keep, not as a weapon, but as a reminder, a lockbox of the person I had been, and the price of forgetting who I was. I closed the drawer. I turned to my laptop, waking the screen. It glowed with the clean, simple desktop of Sterling Horizon. I opened a fresh document, the agenda for the first board meeting. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden light over the city, gilding the windows of the towers. My horizon, Sterling Horizon. I smiled, a real, uncomplicated smile, and began to type.